Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Joanne Davey. We warmly welcome the family of Trooper Harold Thomas Bell, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors. If you are able, please stand and join in the singing of the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Trooper Harold Thomas Bell. Harold Bell, known as Harry, was born in 1901 in Creswick, Victoria, to Thomas and Margaret Bell. He grew up on one of the family farm at Walpiup near Oyun, and by the time the First World War began, he was working the family farm with his father and brother Samuel. After Samuel enlisted in 1916 and embarked for the Western Front, Bell, despite his youth, was also keen to join up and to do his bit. Bell left home in early March 1917, ostensibly to go droving in Queensland. Instead, he travelled to Mildura, where on the 17th of March, he presented himself to the recruiters. Using his mother's maiden name and putting his age up, he enlisted as 21-year-old Harold Thomas Wickham. He also listed an uncle, in actuality his father, as his next of kin. Though he only stood at 5 feet 4 inches tall, he was an excellent horseman, and after his initial training, he was allocated to the light horse reinforcements. Bell embarked from Melbourne with other reinforcements on 22nd of June 1917 aboard the transport ship Port Lincoln, bound for Egypt. After disembarking at Suez in early August, Bell was sent to the isolation camp at Moascar. 1 month later, he was posted to the 4th Light Horse Regiment. In late September, the 4th Light Horse Regiment was involved in scouting the Asana and Kolasi area, taking stock of the wells and water supply in preparation for the attack on Beersheba. The regiment spent much of October around Tel El Farah and were mainly involved in scouting patrols. On the 28th of October, the 4th Light Horse Regiment, along with the other units of General Harry Chevelle's Desert Mounted Corps, began their long march towards Beersheba. The battle began in the early hours of 31 October, with the bulk of the fighting borne by the British infantry. As the afternoon drew towards evening, Beersheba was still in enemy hands. After a hasty conference, General Chevelle ordered the 4th and 12th Light Horse Regiments to capture Beersheba by cavalry charge. The two regiments had spent the day in reserve, but quickly made ready. At around 4:30 p.m, the advance began. Bell's excitement and trepidation can only be imagined as the horses moved from a trot to a canter, then a full tilt gallop for the town into the teeth of the Ottoman defenders. During the early stages of the charge, Bell received a bullet wound to one of his legs. The round shattered his femur and sent him crashing from his horse to the ground. He was evacuated by members of the 4th Light Horse Field Ambulance to their temporary dressing station at Kasamzana, where his wounds were assessed and treated. But Bell's wounds proved mortal. He clung to life throughout the night but died the next morning. He was 16 years old and 7 months. Harold Bell was laid to rest in a temporary cemetery the following morning, along with the remains of the other men of the 4th Light Horse Regiment who had died as a result of the action that captured Beersheba. Bell was later reinterred in the Beersheba War Cemetery. When the Bell family were advised of the death of their nephew in Palestine, Bell's father wrote to the authorities stating that he did not have a nephew by that name, but he did have a son, Harold Thomas Bell. His father had to sign a statutory declaration to correct his son's identity for the records. Further tragedy awaited the Bell family. Samuel, serving with the 57th Battalion, was killed on the 8th of August 1918 near Villers-Bretonneux as British and Dominion troops launched the Great Offensive, which led to the end of the First World War 3 months later. Harold Bell's name and that of his brother Samuel are listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. Harold Bell's photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Trooper Harold Thomas Bell, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.